Well, good afternoon, senators. Welcome to the sixth meeting of the 40th session of the Faculty Senate of Texas A&M University. If you need a reminder of the Zoom features used in our Senate meetings, the Zoom tip sheet can be found on our website at the top of the current agenda page. At this time, please make sure your microphone is muted. Senator Andrew Klein will be monitoring the raise hands function. He will verbally identify you, then you can unmute your mic and ask a question. In fairness to others, please limit yourself to one question at a time. Senator Klein will also be monitoring the chat to convey messages as necessary, so please send any chat questions directly to him. We're using the registration function of Zoom to track attendance. Most visitors today have been asked to view the meeting via our live stream, but our guests and administrators who may be asked to answer questions are joining via Zoom. Visitors wishing to address the Senate may make this request by sending a chat message to Senator Klein or by using the raise hands function. Finally, if a senator wishes to offer a motion during today's meeting, please raise your hand during the appropriate time and ask to be recognized. Please join me in welcoming President Catherine Banks as our guest speaker today. Just making sure that President Banks is actually here. And there she is.
I am here. I am here.
President Banks said she would prefer to dedicate her time this afternoon to answering your questions and hearing any concerns you have. If you have questions for the president, please use the raise hands function and Senator Klein will call on you. To get started, I'll begin by asking the first question. President Banks, I think it's obvious that massive change brings stress along with it. And with all the change underway, it's clear to me that many faculty are feeling pretty stressed. And I would say that it's not just faculty, but I think staff and students are feeling some of that stress as well. Do you think administrators understand that? And what message would you like to give to anxious faculty and others in the university community?
Well, thank you for the question. I want to thank all of you for inviting me and members of my staff to the meeting today. So the question basically is about the stress associated with the changes. And I think I can unequivocally say that we all respect and are very appreciative of the time, effort, and energy that the faculty community has spent on the MGT Path Forward changes, but also doing your day-to-day teaching and research responsibilities in an excellent manner broadly. So we are aware of it. We thank you. We're very proud of this institution and the campus community for all your work, and hopefully we'll move forward to define programs that would support you in the future.
I believe Senator McGill has his hand raised.
Howdy, Dr. Banks. I'm Clint McGill. I'm in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. And this is some of the stress that my department has felt. We have a bioenvironmental sciences undergraduate curriculum that has, 100 and some students. And we also managed an environmental studies, which was an interdisciplinary thing. But as far as I know, all the advising went through our department, all of the input, and guys put lots of work into making this a successful program. And then we learned, like, I guess with all others, more or less one day, that this was no longer our program, that these 75 students in that would be in another college. And yet I think we're still supposed to be the ones that take care of their internships and things like that. And so I just wondered, and I know some of the students were upset. They got an email like the day before classes started saying, oh, now you're in a different college. And I just wonder if that had been, why it hadn't been considered that maybe they'd be grandfathered in, or why nobody had talked to our people who had put so much into it, including Heather Wilkinson especially, that they would be losing this part, especially when you say that the number of students is critical. So I'm interested to hear what you would say.
Yes. Well, the whole university studies program placement was part of the MGT report recommendations. And I don't think Tim Scott is on the call today, but perhaps Alan Sampson. Anyway, the discussion, Tim is here. Okay, good. So I'll pass it to you in just a second, but it was part of the overall conversation about university studies being broadly assigned throughout the university. Now, we do believe that many of these students should be assigned to an existing degree program within the department. So that's what's happening now in some of the colleges. But please remember, if you have university studies students, they still have a track in your department, as it was part of the overall plan to allow these students to be grandfathered until a degree program could be developed with the same focus areas as you've had in the past. And perhaps, Tim, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I'll be glad to add to it. And Clint, I want to make sure I'm understanding that you're talking about the university studies and not the environmental study program. Is that?
I am talking about environmental studies, not.
Gotcha.
I think it was a joint maybe with bio or with geology or geography.
Geosciences, correct. Yeah. So we looked at any of the degree plans that were classified as interdisciplinary before went to arts and sciences in the interdisciplinary programs that was established. I thought we had discussed that when we talked about the formation of arts and sciences, but I will also tell you that interdisciplinary studies was also under consideration at the same time. And so it could have been that I didn't communicate as well about those. But what we're trying to do is have one location for these programs, as well as what we would really like to see happen is for these programs to flourish and to thrive. I know when President Banks and I visited about this often in the last year, she really, I think it's a puzzle that why environmental science is not a bigger emphasis on our campus. So Clint, I apologize about the miscommunication about the movement of that into the interdisciplinary programs. We do, especially if they are ag related, we'd like to see those internships with companies that you have relationships with. And we're happy to try to talk about how to work better with ag in this, what we hope to be a seamless transition.
Yeah, it just seemed funny that nobody knew about it, including my department head, until it happened. And that just seemed bizarre. And, you know, that's a big swap. And people had put a lot of work into making it a success. I don't know if you'll get that now.
Okay.
While we're waiting for some hands to be raised, there is a question in the chat, and it has to do with deferred maintenance and specific questions affecting at least a couple buildings, and it has to do with elevators that are going out and students getting stuck, et cetera, in long lines.
So is the question specifically about deferred maintenance and how much we're spending on deferred maintenance each year?
Yeah, if you could speak about deferred maintenance and what the plans going forward are, that would be great.
Good question. Right now we assign approximately $22 million a year for deferred maintenance across campus. We have determined that we need more money than that. In fact, we need a great deal more, but the amount of money that we are able to contribute in addition to the 22 million is an additional $8 million. So we'll be contributing 30 million a year toward deferred maintenance. Now, I know many of you are asking, how do we determine which building would be first on the list? We do have a process by which we evaluate the state of each building, laboratory, classroom, et cetera. And facilities comes up with a plan and a list of those buildings that are in highest need for the deferred maintenance funding.
Thank you. And Senator Alvarado has his hand raised.
Hi. Hi, President Banks. As you probably know or remember, our building is one of the oldest buildings on campus. It's about 102 years old. And we are in a situation where we don't have more space. I mean, we are hiring new faculty. That's great. But we don't have office spaces for them. We don't have lab spaces for them. And I don't know what the plan is. I mean, sooner than later, we're going to need a new building. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Well, I can say that we're in discussion with your department head at this point about some additional space. So give me a month and then we'll have this conversation again. Let's see if it works out.
Okay, thank you.
So keeping on the idea of buildings, I think a lot of people in the colleges of arts and sciences wonder what the plan moving forward with the academic building is. Lots of people are getting switched in and switched out, and everybody kind of wonders where we're going with that one.
The academic building obviously needs a great deal of tender loving care, I'd say. Certainly it's the most iconic building on this campus, at least representative of Texas A&M and our history, traditions, and core values in so many ways. However, we do need a renovation of that facility. I don't think it will happen tomorrow, but we are considering a fundraising plan to generate funding to allow that beautiful building to be brought to its original splendor. Timing wise, though, I'm not sure. Usually we have to have some sort of funding plan before we move forward with such a large project. I am excited, though, about engaging the new School of Architecture with that project. And I know there are others in other colleges and schools that would be interested in helping us with the planning phase.
So there's another question in the chat. So it says, many of the current administrators have interim titles. So what plans do you have this academic year going through searches and finding long-term non-interim deans and other administrators?
I'll talk to a few and then I'll pass it on to Alan because he knows a little bit more about the breadth over the entire campus. I've already announced that we'll begin a search for a provost in the spring semester. The interim dean of engineering position has now been posted, and we do have a committee involved with that search. School of Nursing. I believe that we have pulled together a committee and just beginning that search as well. Alan, you want to help me with some of these?
Yeah, you hit most of them. The Mace candidates begin interviewing this week. You said nursing and engineering. Architecture is another one that's got an interim. We're assessing that in terms of when that one would start.
I think we're talking, Alan, with that one. It would be in the spring as well. Last time that you and I chatted about it.
Mm-hmm. There's obviously the interim provost that's on my title that the president could comment on that, but then there's a couple interims within the associate provost rank as well, which probably would get settled after the provost was settled. So I think that's the leadership team that you're referring to in terms of provost office, deans, things like that.
I think we have an interim dean of arts and sciences, and that one I think we'll assess in the spring where we are.
So I still don't see any hands raised, but I have another question that has been, I've heard from both faculty and staff. And I think with all these changes, a number of people have wondered kind of what budgets look like. There's been so many changes. People are kind of really in the dark on many different levels about these. So perhaps you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as you all know, we're evaluating our budgeting process now. You have a representative, the Faculty Senate has a representative on the committee that will assess the current budgeting model and determine whether we move forward with a different type of model that may consider performance-based metrics as well as base budgeting. That's underway at this point. I was just talking to John Crawford, the CFO, about that. He believes we may have a plan of action by the summer, but we wouldn't implement it in year one. We probably have some sort of phased approach over a 2-year period. That information should be shared, I would assume, with you through your senator who serves on that committee. Some of you may have seen at the Board of Regents meeting this week that they approved a new model for assigning differential tuition to some of our colleges and schools. Just to remind you all, the differential tuition is linked with the college. We've just changed that to be linked with a degree program. We've changed the amount to be connected with 3 basic designations of each degree, whether it would be base or science and math, more STEM, but particularly science and math, and then these specialty type applied disciplines. We'll be able to share a bit more with the deans on Wednesday.
Thank you. I believe Senator Angie Hill Price has her hand raised next.
Hi, President Banks. I have a question. I was on the MGT committee that dealt with centralized advising, and we worked very hard on a report. And when we received it back, that there was some sentences that were added to the report underneath your signature, some clarifications that were added, which changes a good portion of or significant portion of what we recommended. And that was that all advisors must have a solid line to the department head, to the advising lead in the college. And the problem with that is that it has been interpreted by at least one dean to mean that faculty cannot be advisors. And we rely heavily upon faculty advisors in our college, as you probably know. One of the challenges that we face across the university is we are losing many advisors. It's difficult to hire them. And the beauty of having faculty advisors is that creates a lot of stability because they're not likely to pick up and go to another institution very quickly. It also provides a significant service opportunity particularly for many of our APT faculty who are having to do service and are doing that as part of their obligation to their department, providing that significant advising. And I don't know about you, but I would much rather have a subject matter expert advising my students than a person who is having to be trained in the course material who is not even related to my program. So our staff advisors are wonderful. Our faculty advisors are as well. And I'm very concerned that now we have eliminated this opportunity for faculty to advise because of how that's being interpreted. Is there any opportunity to get that changed back to a dotted line as was recommended in the report? And the reason I ask that, again, because I don't understand what problem it's solving, quite frankly, that solid line. It doesn't solve a problem that I can see. And no one's ever been able to explain the problem that's solving. Thank you.
So of course, we didn't centralize advising at the university level, but we did decide to move forward with advising at the college or school level. I would never even contemplate having a faculty member have a solid reporting line to an advising lead in a college. So whether or not faculty members are advisors or not, I think that's a college level decision, certainly not here. What we're talking about is staff. Our staff members who are have in their position title advising. And so I think that the solid line model now, again, it's very difficult for me to speak about this because these are college decisions in the sense of who's advising students. And I would say we have very dedicated advisors who are staff members. So I would not necessarily agree with you in all cases that you would necessarily need a faculty member advisor. That's dependent on the discipline, of course. And I know even within your own college, you have some variability associated with faculty advising and staff advising. So the solid line would be to allow and also to ensure staff advisors to be evaluated appropriately, to have appropriate training and evaluation with regard to promotion and salary considerations. But I would pass that back to Johnny in your case to talk more broadly about faculty advisors versus staff advisors.
I think Dr. Alvarado has his hand raised again.
I know that many departments across the university offer online masters or masters through online education. But on the other hand, many departments don't, right? So what is your vision when it comes to online education? I mean, in my opinion, it's a low-hanging fruit, right? We have a lot of professional students, former students that would like to get a master's degree, but obviously they cannot just move back to College Station, right? They have their own lives, right? So I know that many schools in the nation recognize this problem. University of Illinois, in the middle of nowhere, Urbana-Champaign, right? Penn State, State College. So they have very good online programs. I mean, do you have a plan or do you have a vision on how to make our university, like those, right? In terms of online education?
We have many degree programs now that have an online master's degree. So in fact, in your own department, the ID program has quite a bit of online content for the master's degree. It really depends on the school or the college to come forth with ideas for these programs. Of course, the university has supporting programs as well as facilities if you're interested in that type of advanced degree mode of instruction. But we're here to support. And if you have a market and you have an interest and the faculty have a desire to teach online, then I think we should think about it.
Thank you. I have a second question, unrelated to the first one. I know that your predecessor at one point had some meetings with the faculty to talk about performance issues, talk about number of publications per faculty, talk about impact, talk about the PhD completion rate and things like that. I mean, there was even a website, right, at one point about transparency and accountability that had to do with, how faculty members are doing in terms of scholarship. Is your administration going to follow a similar approach just to make sure that we elevate the stature of the university?
Well, I think Dr. Anand is on the Zoom as well, but we have put a great deal of information online with regard to departments. And I feel very, very comfortable sharing information about units. I don't feel comfortable sharing information about individual faculty members. I do believe that NK has included connection with what we used to call the flower diagram. I'm not sure how we refer to it now, but also evaluating how each unit is doing compared to others across the university. NK, would you like to speak to that? Because it falls in your category.
So, if you go to facultyaffairs.tamu.edu and go to faculty affairs intranet, you will find all kinds of information about the college budget, not department budget, but college budget, and then the departmental and the college level performance on SEH, WSEH, publications, books, and citations and everything. And the latest one to include is at the bottom, you'll find the teaching histogram, okay? So that tells you by tenure track faculty how many courses they taught. A histogram in terms of fall 21 and spring 22, and for APT faculty included, what the breakdown is. So all the information that you need on the performance is there. And the sources for that are the Maestro, Maestro, DARS, and then Academic Analytics. And these are the, the comprehensive sources that we have used to put the data. And the data curation is on a calendar. And every month, and we have posted the calendar too. So every month certain data will be updated. And I believe I have been informed that whatever we plan to do for October has been completed. Thank you.
But if I may follow up, looking at the data is great, but I guess my point was a bit bigger than that, in the sense that what is your vision of, what do we need to do as an institution, individually and collectively, to make A&M the top 5 public university in the United States? It's just scholarship, better publications. I mean, what is it? I mean, I just want to get your opinion about that.
Well, it depends on each discipline as well. So I think you could say one answer for STEM and others for those in the humanities. I think it's really up to each college dean or school dean to determine how their unit can excel. And it may be even down to the departmental level. For example, I was recently at the AAU meeting, and there was quite a deal of discussion about the balance between the weight associated with membership and books versus publications that we might think of archival publication. What's the right balance of that? What's the right balance when you evaluate a university for membership between funding and reputation? So I do prefer to leave that to the unit heads. Because again, I don't think that we could set forth a general plan. Now, PhD students are important to certain disciplines, but maybe not others. So the challenges for each of the unit heads or the deans in the case of the colleges or schools to determine how they can move up. Now, I will say that there's also some units that are doing quite well and others that are perhaps on struggling a bit or challenged to move in the upper echelon of those competitors. Again, a plan of action is the next step toward preeminence.
Thank you.
I think Senator Vanuma Pali is next.
Hi, Dr. Banks. You mentioned, and I hope I'm not reading into this too much, but you mentioned performance-based metrics, and then with the discussion on the metrics for us in terms of teaching courses and things. My concern is that not all teaching hours are not all the same. So, for example, I teach a journal article course and I teach an animal models course, and they're only 1 credit apiece, but they take an extraordinary amount of work because animal models of human disease are always changing, are always updating. And so, yes, we are in class physically for an hour, but I am using hours of my time to ensure that I get the most pertinent data, and that the discussion for example, our journal club is the most of the most benefit. And so on an hour per hour basis, it may look like I'm not quote unquote doing too much, and others in my position aren't doing too much. But in fact, we are contributing significantly to this college. And I just worry, what is the plan to ensure that things like these metrics we're not comparing apples to oranges?
Those are exactly the type of questions that we are addressing, I believe, in this committee to evaluate what the next budget model should be. We don't expect every college or school or department, for that matter, to necessarily have the same metrics of success. So it's part of the conversations. Some departments, some faculty members teach very large classes, some don't. It's really discipline specific. So it's part of the conversation. NK, you're the one leading that committee. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, okay. So this is the reason why we posted this data so that the deans can take a look at it and then come back and then tell us. And we have no intention of straitjacketing a college or straitjacketing the expectation, but this is for the deans to look at. Coming back to Dr. Alvarado's question, the data is there for the individual units to move the needle, to find out where they are compared to their peers and to move the needle.
But remember that we're looking at schools and colleges. It will depend on the deans will make the decisions in a more granular way.
Thank you.
But could I follow up on that? I think that President Banks, what I hear from a number of people is the concern that the university might, by looking at things like majors, overlook the huge amount of time and effort put into, for example, I hate to use the term service courses, but there are many departments in my own college where the relative number of majors compared to they may be teaching thousands of students every semester in the core curriculum. And I think there's a real concern that somehow we might develop a formula that weights more toward the majors or something and overlooks to a degree all of that other teaching load that happens in it. It seems to me from the conversations I've had with your key administrators, you're trying to prevent that from happening. Am I accurate that you really are considering that these are important functions, for example, the core curriculum?
I think it's very important. In fact, we just discussed that a few minutes ago in my office. When we look at differential tuition and we determine how do you think about differential tuition? Is it just students within your own department or within your own degree program? Or should there be some consideration of the percentage of courses that are taught outside of your department and perhaps even outside of your college? So I'm very well aware of the challenge of the balance, and I think that we will be addressing it. In fact, I'm positive we'll be addressing it.
Speaker Rice, while the algorithm is not definite yet, Dr. Adam Pickens is on the committee from the Faculty Senate. SCH and WSCH will play a major role in the algorithm because that's how the university gets subvented. So when you include SCH and WSCH, automatically that is taken care because they are SCH and WSCH are mapped to the instructor sideline.
I believe Senator Townsend has her hand raised next.
Oh, good afternoon. Can you hear me? I had to
Yes.
switch microphones. All right, thank you so much. I have a little bit of concerns about the performance-based metrics. There are some units, ours in particular, I'm from Galveston, who are currently under-resourced for a variety of reasons. And I would hate to see these under-resourced units get thrown into a performance-based metrics system without having the opportunity to catch up first so that we can even start on a level playing field. We are understaffed, we're underfinanced, we don't have faculty in line to teach courses we need to teach, and to not be able to get the resources to catch up. I have some real concerns about dropping into a performance-based metrics system. Thank you.
Senator Moyna has her hand raised.
I'm sorry. Did that question get answered? I'm sorry. My my computer was frozen for a period of time.
I don't believe it was addressed.
I apologize. So I think I did hear the aspect of that we should ensure that unique programs that are smaller programs be considered carefully when we evaluate performance-based metrics, particularly those programs in Galveston. And yes, I am aware of that. And we understand that Galveston is a program that's mission-driven, and we must consider that as we look at the performance overall.
Thank you.
Senator Moyna, I believe you're up next.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Banks and everybody. When we say that a department is underperforming and the performance or underperformance is entirely quantitative, as I believe it has been, that has been how it has been defined up until now. The problem with that is that it unwittingly or wittingly encourages a certain type of behavior, for example, large classes. And some things cannot be taught in large classes. I mean, they can be, but not well. So if there is a perverse incentive to do things that are not, not by the mission of the department. So how do we get out of those vicious cycles where the metric ends up running the enterprise rather than the quality that we know we need?
So I would say again that we will be basing the model around colleges and schools within different departments, and within the department and actually within a college or school. Those kinds of decisions must be made by the leadership in that unit. So you all have very specialty programs that perhaps need to remain small. You have other programs that could grow. That's based on your discipline and based on expectations in your profession.
So I have a couple of other questions in the chat. So the first is, what is the status of the university-wide committee to review department PNT decisions? If we're going ahead with this, why was it deemed necessary?
Well, I'll say one thing. You asked me to consider that, and I actually embraced that. I have heard many concerns from faculty members across the university that promotion and tenure practices and processes have become burdensome and perhaps unduly so. And that's when I asked Dr. Anand to consider it, ask for input throughout the university from faculty, and perhaps use best practices to ensure that the burden upon the faculty is not too high. NK, would you like to address that a bit?
Yes, as you know that, I think about a month back or 2 months back, I floated the idea, and it was met with a very fierce resistance. And then people thought that it was additional bureaucracy and so forth. And now I have revised the proposal, and I shared it with some select group of faculty senate and CPI. I have not shared with the Council of Deans yet, and I have not received any feedback. The idea is to make sure that all the colleges and schools consistently adhere to our own system regulations and the policies. And we already have a readers program. So the only thing this does is that this will have a faculty elected representative there, instead of we choosing from Provost Office, Faculty Affairs and VPR and Office of Diversity. You'll have an elected representative, and you will have 2 different committees, one for APT faculty, one for tenure track faculty, and the votes will be recorded and will be relayed to the president for her decision. So that's the only difference. And we are not the only one who are doing this. And in the white paper that I shared with the people who talked to me, I have indicated several of our peer institutions who are already doing this, and which is in place.
So hopefully, if we have a uniform process, at that point, we can start thinking about efficient operations.
So I have another question in the chat, and this has to do with something I think a lot of departments are facing. I'll try to read it. So staff turnover continues to be a challenge, where staff frequently jump to positions in other departments for a slight increase in salary. And it goes on to mention, the department head mentions that they have a hard time doing anything because of retention packages. It's hard to do those. And is there something that can be done that can help alleviate this situation where we see frequent turnover in staff?
We're working very hard with HR to ensure that every staff member can develop a clear career path for their life at Texas A&M University as an employee. And that may mean changing departments. I was a department head for 7 years myself, and I know that it is very difficult to recruit the best. And once you have the best in your operation, it can be difficult to replace them. But I do believe every staff member should have the opportunity to see their time at Texas A&M as a career path, not just a job. Now, in terms of the amount of money that you offer for salary, we leave that up to the unit or the individual. We don't designate a specific amount for each particular position across the entire university. But we need to ensure that our staff have the opportunity to reach their goals. Greg, would you like to add to that a bit?
Well, I think you're exactly right. I don't think we want to not have a staff the ability to move around. Now, we are looking at compensation across the university and looking at, do we need to make changes in terms of compensation, looking at areas where there is high turnover and those kind of things too. But I'm kind of like Dr. Banks. I'm less concerned about people moving within the organization because they have a new career opportunity. I'm more concerned we're losing people to outside organizations, although same thing, if somebody has an opportunity, I don't want to ever limit their ability to do that. But I do think we want to make sure that we're paying people in the proper compensation levels and dealing with retention kind of issues and making sure we're looking at markets. There's been a lot of discussion about the Galveston market and are we comparing apples to oranges when we look at compensation in Galveston, some of those kind of things. So we're going to continue to look at that. But we do want to, this whole idea of career paths that we've been talking about is allowing and giving people the opportunity to look for how they build a career at Texas A&M, which may mean at some point moving from one department to another for good opportunities.
Greg, would you like to speak to remote work as well? I know that there are a number of people who have asked me about that option.
Yeah, we were hoping to run that by the regents either Thursday or Friday, and it actually got bumped off the calendar. So we may try to do it at a special called meeting that's coming up here. But we pretty much have a policy in place. That'll be a beginning policy. I suspect we may have to evolve over time as this whole issue of remote work kind of settles in. But basically, and I think I've talked to this group before about that. I mean, there's three types of jobs. There's those jobs that can be pretty much fully remote. There are those jobs that are hybrids. And then there are those jobs where because of your direct interaction with students or whatever, you really can't be remote. And so we're going to roll out a policy that makes it a little bit easier for staff to be able to look at those options and take advantage of that if they want to be remote, whether it's in a full-time basis or a hybrid basis, depending on their job. That policy is going to be rolled out probably, hopefully this week, or maybe next week. We need to again confirm with the system to make sure we're okay to roll that out. For those fully remote jobs where there's an agreement that there is no need for direct interaction on a regular basis, there'll have to be an agreement from your supervisor and from the VP or CEO of that staff person's area to sign off on that to allow that. Those are going to be back office kind of jobs, probably IT kind of driven jobs where you can work pretty much full time from a remote location and not have a problem with productivity. For other jobs that are hybrid, where there's an option to actually have some free available time to work remote, you have to do the same thing. A staff person will make the request. It'll need to get approved. We've made the approval process much simpler. Instead of in past alternative work locations, I think it was a 6 to 8 page kind of application you had to do. It's a single page request now to make the change. And you have either an option to do 1 day a week or 2 days a week for working remote if your organization that you work with agrees that it's your job fits that kind of function that you can work remotely. So hopefully we'll see folks taking advantage of that. Hopefully it will help us with retention. Like I said, I suspect over time we may tweak this policy as we see how people respond to it and how well it works. But we definitely want to begin to allow people those options since it's becoming, if not the norm, at least an expectation with an awful lot of our staff folks.
Senator Alvarado has his hand raised again.
Thank you. And this will be my last question, or just point. One thing I have noticed over the years, at least from my point of view here in my department, is that to be able to hire the best candidate or to be able to retain the best employee, it comes down to money, right? So, for better or worse, universities are not known for offering, decent pay to good candidates. So we have that problem, right? So is there something else we can do besides just a good salary? Can we just give them more days off or make things more flexible? Or, is there something else we can do to make, our positions, more, likable?
So this whole succession planning, the whole process of professional development, I think would be very unique in a university setting once it's complete. Damon has a plan of action to support staff broadly in many new ways. Now, department heads have to decide what they can pay particular individual. But I do believe that we want to see Texas A&M as a place where someone could spend their entire career, not just a job for 2 to 3 years. I don't know if Damon's on the call, but certainly I think that might be a good idea, Greg, for Damon to come talk about some of his initiatives, particularly in the area of succession planning and HR. And all that revolves around the idea that someone could set the career path over a long period of time.
And I think I would just add, if I could, real quick, Senator Klein, to Senator Alvarado, I think, compensation is important, but there's an awful lot of research and studies that shows compensation is often not the most important issue. So again, I'm not diminishing it because we do have to take a look at it, but often it's, how supportive are you by your leadership, by your supervisor, benefit programs, your work environment, all those kind of things too. So as Dr. Banks said, the whole concept of what's your opportunity for growth, for promotion, those are really critical. We're looking at that to make that more clear for workers. We're always looking at benefits and looking for ways to improve benefits. Fortunately, the system working with us has been able to keep benefit costs relatively steady for the last few years. I'm hoping they're going to continue to do that over this next year and hopefully into the future, because I think that helps us, because I think we have a very competitive benefits package compared to a lot of other employers. And so it's always just a whole mix of things that we have to constantly be looking at. And we're looking at all those. But the biggest change, I think, is to Dr. Banks' point, which is to show people opportunities for advancement, promotion, and new challenges within the organization.
I would like to leap in and piggyback on that also for a second, because I know that Speaker-elect Hammond has raised this issue a number of times. We talked with the chancellor about it in a recent executive committee meeting, and that's the need to try and keep faculty salaries competitive in a time of high inflation that we see many of our peer institutions and many of those in the SEC raising base salaries higher than A&M was able to do. And I'm wondering to what degree you are concerned about faculty and, for that matter, staff, because we're seeing it there, I think, as well, falling behind in a period of high inflation compared to our peer institutions.
Well, I would ask that you look at those universities that had a high increase in salary and determine whether they had an increase in tuition as well. So as you all know, we did not have a tuition increase last year. I believe the chancellor is planning to talk with the legislature about the fact that we must consider affordability, but we also must consider the fact that we want to recruit and retain the very, very best. And again, as you said, salaries need to be in consideration when you're thinking about a plan for really supporting the faculty long term. So hopefully during this session that we will discuss this more, and perhaps we could increase some of our funding levels from the legislature.
So speaking of Speaker-elect Hammond, Tracy, are you available to ask your question now? She's picking up a child, so she wanted
Yes, I just got home. One second. So yeah, sorry, today's a little bit more chaotic with the rain and GIS day and a lot of other things. Let me see if I can turn my video on. Okay, you guys can see me?
Yes.
Okay, so so I actually I was there, President Banks, at your engineering town hall, obviously, and one of the things that really piqued my interest was the Good Bull fund that you guys are doing. And what I really appreciated about this is that you're putting the power to make change in the student body and what they need in the hands of the students themselves. And I thought that was really exciting. And in fact, we almost implemented something a lot smaller than that within computer science department with our was it designated tuition? And so we were going to do like a little, much smaller, not so much, but ask the students for ideas that they thought could make the community better in computer science. And so I really like that. And it actually got me thinking about the other question that I had asked you about the HSI and what we're doing. And you encouraged us to think about ways that we could apply for funding in this space, and also talked about the issue of graduate students only at 6%, and thinking about if we could be creative about this. And what that made me think about is, what if you did something similar to the Good Bull, but for faculty to pilot ideas that could perhaps improve inclusivity, our community, support for HSI students, support for HSI faculty, support for our Black faculty. And, these don't have to be just automatically everyone gets one, which seems like it would be for the students, but there could be, some way of selecting these ideas. And then hopefully some of them might even be pilots for huge NSF grants that would, be transformational in the way that we support our students. It was just an idea that I had that was really inspired by the Good Bull Fund, which I thought was tremendously innovative and the right thing to do, because you're putting, again, the power in the people that have the best ideas of what they should be doing. And so I was just thinking there might be a way to harness that, also to give the faculty some ways that they can think about improving student life, faculty life, and it doesn't have to be huge monies, but just something to get people to start being creative about what they can try. And then hopefully if they get a little pilot that's successful, maybe then that's a seed money for a big NSF or some other type of thing. It was just an idea.
Really, really good idea. I mean, Alan's on the call here. I think it's intriguing. Of course, let me just say, with the Good Bull Fund, the maximum amount of funding is $5,000.
Yeah, and actually that might be all that faculty might need too, to try like a little thing in their own department to see if something worked. And if something did work, then that information could be brought back to, either Tim Scott if it's about student success, or it could be brought back to NK if it's about faculty success, and expanded if it was shown, and attempted in a larger space. I think it could be kept at a small amount depending on, what would make sense. But, just things that would encourage the community, and putting the onus for coming up with the ideas on the faculty themselves. And sometimes they come up with great ideas. And maybe just the fact that you create this itself would create a boon to, it shows the confidence that you have in the faculty and being able to come up with great ideas. And so that could also be, again, a way of showing of support, and maybe that in itself would help improve community. I don't know. It's just, again, I was inspired by your Good Bull Fund, and I just thought it was a really neat idea. So
I think that's interesting, Alan. It would probably come out of the provost's office. As a very interesting approach.
NK and I'll visit about that. I think it's an intriguing idea. There's a number of seed pilot kind of grant kind of programs around, but maybe there's a space in there that we're not hitting. Those tend to be very targeted at specific things, but one that's a little bit more free form and allows faculty to think a little bit more kind of blue sky, out of the box kind of thing. So let us noodle about that a little bit and come back.
Yeah, great. No problem. Thank you.
I believe Senator Haney has his hand up next.
Thank you, Senator Klein. Thank you, Dr. Banks, for joining us, and you too, NK, coming back. One thing I would like to ask about is if we can take a look at study abroad and the fees that are charged that are prohibitive to us continuing our high impact practices. And I know I may be the rare white, elk in this, but when I take students abroad, we're actually leaving Friday for Japan for the national model of United Nations, the international model. And we're being charged $200 per student. for that, and that makes the trip prohibitive. It adds to the prohibitive cost of it. And my concern is that because study abroad is doing absolutely nothing, they are not handling any of our logistics. I have done that myself. They're not booking any of the hotel. They're not doing any of the airline tickets. My concern is, why are we out the $200 per student fee when study abroad is doing absolutely nothing for us? And I agree, I may be the rare white elk here, but I think we need to look into that because it's driving the cost of these very important high impact programs way, way up. Thank you.
We can look into it. Alan, do you have anything to say about it? I don't think Susan Balabina is on this call. So Alan, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'd have to look into that. When I was running study abroads, there was usually the ability to get kind of what is contained within that. And many times there's a lot of back office kinds of cost recovery things for insurance and all that kind of stuff. But I know there's different packages that you can subscribe into. So I'll have to look into what the $200 rate is and see how appropriate that is.
Well, I'm sorry. I can understand a fee for, handling the international travel insurance and things like that, but $200 is very excessive, especially when I haven't even gotten the PowerPoints for export controls or, traveling and things that are usually sent. And so for $200 per student, I don't really see where we're getting anything in return from that. So I would appreciate if someone could look into that. Thanks.
Yeah, I will. There in the past were levels that were everything from us just making sure we knew where you were going and having, keeping track of where all the students and faculty were going, all the way up to full insurance and concierge kind of service. So I'll have to check with Susan's office on that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic because, us getting $200 per student for doing no logistics and having no support, if that would be lower, that would be fantastic. Thanks.
Just want to make a point too, though, that we do have to cover our costs. So I know it's expensive, but travel costs are expensive. Now, if you have more scholarships for international programs in your college, and you have some advantage, but I think we do need to raise more money for travel abroad scholarships to be able to reduce the cost for many of our students, many of those who don't have the resources to travel in that way.
I see a lot of echoing comments in the chat, so I'll make sure I check into it and get back. And maybe have Susan or Holly come to a meeting in the future and talk a little bit about that.
Good idea.
Thank you.
So I have one additional question in the chat, and that is there a plan for strategic planning anytime soon?
We have a strategic plan at this point, which actually aligns quite nicely with the state of the university ideas that we put forth at the September 28th State of the University address. So I'm pretty comfortable with the strategic plan we have in place now. I'm drawing a blank to remember when that strategic plan ended. I can't remember if it was 2030 or 2025. It was 2030. Tim's nodding. So 2030. And, we did quite a bit of work on that strategic plan, had a major impact, and that we've already seen, but also a significant amount of input from faculty across campus. So unless y'all think that we should jump into that again after we've just completed a significant amount of work on that particular plan, I think we'll stick with it.
It is, just to clarify, it's called A Decade of Excellence, but it goes from 2020 through 2025. So it shoots ahead, but it really stops at 2025.
Okay, so sounds like we'll be busy soon.
Okay.
Got a couple of years.
Senator Alvarado.
Sorry, I had to jump into this as well. So I just have a philosophical question, right? Do you think Texas A&M is agile enough, nimble enough, flexible enough to adapt to, what's going on in the world? Or are we just too set in our ways to adapt to what we need to do, right? I think many universities have had that conversation, that discussion, right? That how do we adapt to what's going on in the world, right?
Mhm.
How do we do better research for certain areas, or how do we deal with certain communities, or how do we deal with a new type of student, right? So my impression is that we are not agile enough, that we're not nimble enough, and we're very hard to convince some of my colleagues to try something new sometimes. But that's my perspective.
I mean, I think that there are some units that are very agile and others that perhaps are more traditional in their approach. But I think those are conversations you should have within your departments, because you can make change. I will say, though, that when you talk about core curriculum, that's a faculty decision. So you need to develop a consensus about an idea before you can make those kinds of changes. That's just the way that our process works.
And it's very difficult to make changes. So, anyway, that's my point. Thank you.
So I just had another question posted in the chat. Is there a plan in the future to review success of the reorganization of the academic programs in their new units versus their success in the units where they were previously administered? If that makes sense.
I think I would probably state that would be up to the dean to decide, because the overall performance of units would fall to the dean. So I'm not sure I am answering the question appropriately, because I'm not sure I interpreted it appropriately, but if I didn't answer it, please let me know.
I have not seen a response in the chat. So Dale, that is all I have seen.
Okay. Well, President Banks, thank you. And thank you, Vice President Hartman, Provost Sams, Vice Provost Scott and Vice President Nan for joining and supporting today. We really appreciate you taking the time. So many thanks for doing that.
Thank you all. Bye.
We'll move on to speaker comments now. Colleagues, we're in the third month of our grant experiment to alter the way we conduct business as the pandemic recedes, and we examine what we've learned during the past 2 years. So far, our online business meetings have continued to produce excellent attendance and active participation. Our efforts to provide in-person opportunities have met with initial success in my view. We had a robust reception for new members last month at the A&M Hotel and Conference Center, and I heard from many of you that you enjoyed the event and look forward to more. The first 2 monthly coffee hours, although relatively small in attendance, resulted in important sharing of information that helped us quickly assist some faculty members who were experiencing difficulties. Our next Senate coffee hour is scheduled for this Friday from 8 to 9:30 a.m. in the Great Hall at the YMCA building. It is informal, and we invite senators to stop by, even if you can only make it for a few minutes, to join in the discussion. One issue that gets raised repeatedly is the mental health of our students. In our continuing efforts to find ways to address the problem, several members of the executive committee, at the invitation of Nancy Farnwald, the former dean of nursing and new associate vice president for University Health Services, will be meeting with her and members of the counseling services team to brainstorm ways to help faculty work with students confronting challenges. If you have suggestions or questions you'd like to see us address, please email me or stop by the coffee hour on Friday. Finally, with COVID, flu, and RSVP active in the area and other parts of Texas, I hope everyone has a safe and healthy Thanksgiving break and wrap up to the semester. Now for approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the October 17th meeting minutes found in attachment B? Hearing none, I declare the minutes approved as distributed. Moving on to the consent agenda. Concerns have been expressed and I have been asked to pull NUTR 366, NUTR 367, and BMEN 311 because of their overlap with biology courses. So those three courses are pulled from the consent agenda. Are there any other questions or concerns on the November 14th consent agenda? Then the items requested are removed from the consent agenda and can be considered in the unfinished business portion of the agenda. I declare the,
John
Dr.
just raised his hand.
Stallone, I see your hand.
There, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I actually, there are two other courses that I would like to have pulled, but can I do that now or just have to wait until
No, you can ask for them to be pulled right now. What two are they?
That would be nutrition 366 and 367.
Those are the two of the three.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. I heard the numbers, not the topics. Okay.
Okay.
All right. That's fine. Thank you.
Any others? Then with those pulled from the agenda, I declare the remaining December consent agenda items approved as presented. Now, given that action that we just took, which creates the potential for unfinished business, we'll move into that portion of the meeting, and we can consider those three courses that we pulled from the consent agenda. If anyone would like to make a motion in regard to any of those courses.
Dale, Senator Taylor has raised his hand.
I just had a question on behalf of the faculty in nutrition. I presume the full nutrition classes are, as indicated by Dr. Stallone and you, Speaker Rice, there's a fair degree of overlap with those courses and biology. Has the curriculum committee or the responsible committees presumably already reviewed those courses to identify the nature of the overlap in the content and say this is perfectly acceptable to remove these from consent agenda? Because those courses are in my college. And so I want to ask that question just to say, hey, to my faculty there, hey, they were reviewed. There's a reason for them being pulled off consent. So, or for the actions that are being taken, I might ask.
I believe Senator Tagg has his hand raised.
Yeah, so these came as somewhat of a surprise to biology as the nutrition didn't communicate with the associate head in biology for academic affairs regarding these courses. The party, I guess, involved in putting these together approached biology a year ago for a different class, Biology 311, which after review also had considerable overlap. And, you know,
And it's Nutrition 311.
It's Nutrition 311.
11 and 312.
And, you know, that was also a no-go because of the anatomy and physiology component, which is significant. And so these came to us as a surprise. I can't speak for the university's curriculum committee, but I do know that they were a little surprised about the overlap. So
about nutrition putting those courses together.
Yeah, and that there was not, you know, I can't speak for them because I wasn't on that committee, but the feeling was that they made sure that they were courses, maybe not examine the overlap part of it, including in one case, one of our deans, so our associate deans. So.
Can I just add one more thing? I think there was no support letter from the biology department since they did not reach out to us. The only conversation we had was a year ago about 311 and 312 nutrition. And we had already said no, since it was a significant overlap with our anatomy and physiology, but after that, we never heard from them. So because there was no support letter, we were a little surprised, everybody was, as to how it made it through the UCC.
Okay, thank you.
And I will note that normally those support letters are a part of the process, but we occasionally find what is happening today, that has happened in the past. And normally what someone has done is move to table the courses until the departments involved resolve their differences, and then that makes it free to pull those courses back off the table in a future meeting for approval.
So I believe Senator McGill has his hand up next.
Yeah, I was wondering what biology courses, what are the titles of those that would be combating with nutrition, which I assume is human nutrition.
So yeah, the nutrition courses, the actual titles are Comprehensive Anatomy and Physiology in Nutrition, 1 and 2, and they compete with our Integrated Human Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2. And really the parallels are pretty shocking. So with the added nutrition component added, but if you kind of march through, they're very, very similar courses.
Well, in that case, I would like to move what Dale suggested, and that is that they be sent back to the colleges to get rid of their differences of opinion or something, however you say that.
So what I'm hearing is Senator McGill making a motion that we table the 3 courses for the respective departments to work out their differences, which would allow them to be brought back off the table and voted on in a future meeting if things get resolved easily.
Angie, did you want to say something about this before that motion gets?
Tracy, I'm sorry, but the motion got made, so that takes precedence. So we can, is there a second to Senator McGill's motion?
I'll second.
And now for discussion. Angie, did you have discussion on this topic?
No, I just wanted to verify the specific courses. I missed writing down the numbers for the courses that were pulled.
Nutrition
yes.
366.
Nutrition 366 367, and what, I'm not sure what BMEN stands for.
Biomedical engineering.
Okay, biomedical engineering 311.
Okay.
So
No, and while we're talking, so I totally understand. I have no problem with that. If you could tell me what the overlap was with 311, that would be great, just so we can start resolving that.
Sure. So 311 is it's similar course in biology is
430.
for biology 430, which is biological imaging taught by Dr. Larry Griffin. He's taught it for years, and very recently authored a textbook for that course. And BMEN actually is using that same text, which is had just been published, and the parallels are, well, pretty stark.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And they're using the preprint version of the textbook.
Thank you.
So any other discussion? Senator Klein, could you launch a poll on this motion that we table these three courses to give the respective departments an opportunity to work out the issues? So if you're in favor of tabling, please vote yes. If you're against it, please vote no.
Okay, it appears the poll has stabilized. I'm going to end it and share the results. And Dale, it's 72 in yes, 3 no.
Okay, thank you. Then I will declare the courses tabled. Moving on to committee reports. Are there any questions or concerns for the Core Curriculum Council report found in attachment C? Hearing no questions or concerns, I declare the report approved as submitted. The only item of new business is an emergency item I placed on the agenda today after we received the request for approval of degree candidates. Secretary Epstein, please read the number of degrees being awarded by location and move the approval of degrees.
I move approval of attachment D1. The following number of candidates will be receiving degrees, including bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. The combined colleges and schools in College Station, 5,160, Galveston, 158, Qatar, 16, College of Dentistry in Dallas, 2, Law School in Fort Worth, 101, for a total of 5,437 degrees to be awarded this fall.
Thank you. Secretary Epstein has moved attachment D1. Is there any discussion? Senator Klein, please launch a poll. So if you're in favor of approving the degree candidates, please vote yes.
It appears we are stabilized, so I'm going to end the poll. And there were 72 yeses and 2 nos. Oh, sorry, I forgot to share the results.
Okay, thank you. With that wrapping up business, I invite Speaker-elect Hammond to take us into the Committee of the Whole.
Fantastic. Thank you, Speaker Rice. I want to begin by asking if there are any positive actions or items of concern that are occurring on campus related to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Senator Hammond, do you wish to be recognized?
Sure. I guess I would just like to say that Texas Land Grants Day was an amazing success, which was a meeting of researchers from Prairie View, A&M, and Texas A&M, the only two land grants in the state. At some point when Julie Harlan was giving her talk, it was standing room only with, it felt like, a quarter of the participants or to a third were standing. And there was so much energy throughout the entire day. And so I want to thank everybody who participated. And I really like that we are getting much closer to our colleagues at Prairie View. Thank you.
Senator Ware is his hand raised too.
Thank you, Senator Klein. So it's not exactly, unfortunately, a positive thing that this one's about. So this is something that was brought to my attention by one of my students a little bit earlier in the semester. And I've been meaning to bring it up, but I think now's the opportunity to bring it up. This particular student is wheelchair bound and has difficulty using his hands. Okay, he's able to take coursework and do all the things that he needs to do, except for getting into the classroom in the Zachary building. So he's able to get into the Zachary building. That's easy. But none of the classroom doors open inward. They all open outward into the hallway. So for a student who has limited use of hands, to be able to grab the door handle and pull it open is a no-go. So unfortunately, the student has to have assistance every time to get into the classroom. And it's not just my classroom, it's every classroom in Zachary. And it's not just every classroom in Zachary. There are classrooms in just about every other building that I looked at that have this same situation. Now, the building that I'm in right now, the AI engineering building, all the doors open inward. So someone can get a little help and get pushed in. But I know that perhaps we meet the law that ADA, the ADA laws, but I don't think we're meeting the spirit of the ADA laws when we restrict access to students, even inadvertently. And so it's not very inclusive for those students. Thank you.
Senator Hammond had her hand up next.
Yeah, I want to respond to exactly that. So I also have a blind PhD student, blind from birth. And I think looking at engineering, I identified we have deaf engineers, we have engineers in wheelchairs, but specifically engineering is very inaccessible to A, blind students, and B, students with amputated limbs or other ways, perhaps from birth, mobility, specifically hand mobility issues. And at the most recent ERC meeting, Engineering Research Council meeting, they were asking people to come up with, some significant improvement to, they call it mid-scale, NSF mid-scale improvement to our infrastructure. And I said, well, what I think would be a really important thing for all the engineering departments is to figure out how to make Zachary specifically accessible to blind students and students with hand mobility issues, of which I think a lot of the same solutions would affect each one, specifically having at least two, one table that sits at least two people with these issues in each classroom. And I welcome anybody who also thinks that this would be I don't need to lead it. It's coming up in January, just a pre-proposal. But if there are other people who think that this is important and want to participate, I would love that group to talk with me. And Richard, maybe this is something that you could help provide feedback on and be a leader in that space.
Would love to. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I can try to send that out to anybody who's interested. And again, this is something I'm just passionate about because I see how, specifically engineering has a lot of graphics. And so it is very inaccessible to blind students. In fact, and so that's why we don't even see very many blind students in engineering. And the same thing with a lot of our fabrication labs, like the hand, there are so many things that require intricate use of our hands that are not accessible to people with hands. So those are the two groups that I really found that engineering was almost actively pushing them out of. And so yes, so please email me, anybody who thinks that they can participate, have any interest at all. I'd love to have this be at least engineering wide, if not all the university wide. That's it. Thank you.
Senator Hill Price has her hand raised next.
Hi, so I happen to know about Senator Ware's case because we dealt with that. But I agree, one of the design constraints for labs, as Senator Townsend has pointed out previously, that lab doors have to open out. I don't know if that's why they designed Zachary that way, who knows? But one of the challenges and one of the things that we have to do, and I know that everybody else does this, and I don't know if there's a better way to get the communication faster with the student, because they don't necessarily go to disability services for things like this until it is almost become an issue. It's already become an issue, is to meet with the students and do the accommodations, whatever they need. We do it on that case by case basis because everyone has very specific things, and we do one solution for one student. It's not necessarily going to apply to all of them. And we've tried really hard to work on that in our college, but there's a delay in getting information from the students. So I don't know if there's a way that we can help across the university just expedite that communication so that we can make sure that we can get those students accommodated more quickly instead of having to talk to multiple people to get things happen. Thank you.
Senator Tagg had his hands raised next.
Completely different topic, but I've had some of my students approach me and ask if there's a way that we could not have their registration times occur when they're actually in class, when they're supposed to be actively participating or taking exams. I know with 70,000 students, this is probably maybe an impossibility. I don't know. But I thought I'd throw it out there as a potential idea.
So I'm asking, Jorge has a good question. Is there a specific inclusivity issue?
Oh, no, sorry. Sorry, I forgot we hadn't moved on.
A significant piece in equity here. It's possible that affects different communities differently. So
it is about getting their classes, but I imagine it probably hits everyone about the same. So okay. Sorry, I'd forgotten we hadn't moved on.
It's okay. Were there more questions about DEI or accessibility? Okay, so if not, well, Andy, if you would raise your hand again. Moving on to general items, is there any business for the committee of the whole? And maybe we can let Andy finish his statement.
Oh, that was about it. I don't know if there's a way to do that or not, but I know that a lot of students, especially the first semester freshmen that we see, would appreciate it as class sections fill up very, very quickly. And if they're in the middle of an exam or a class where they really need to be engaged and involved, then they're out. They don't have a fighting chance. The window is actually not bad, but by the time they get out of class, what they so desperately are trying to pick up is long gone. So
and Andy, are they using the pre-built scheduler that will, but it's just full by the time they
I mean, if they have like class at 9:10 and their window opens at 9:20 or 9:30, by the time they get out of class, people have already taken the pre-built spots.
But according to the new scheduler software in Civitas, that it automatically uploads if they built it correctly. I know that it's complicated.
Okay, well, maybe they just don't know that then. So there could be some improved messaging about that where they get set it up as be, to do that. Because
I'll
I've
work
had
with the registrar on that.
Yeah, because we definitely have had especially guilty. I'm giving an exam this Friday, and I've had probably half a dozen students ask me what they can do about their registration window. So, so I'll relay that information. But thanks, Tim.
I believe Senator Alvarado had his hand raised next.
Yes, I have a complaint about how I'm going to use my office computer right now. This is my laptop. When you go to the schedule of classes, it's not what I used to see in the past. Now it's a real cumbersome interface for the user where you have all these different columns. They had to use the filters. It's really cumbersome to find anything. I mean, you had to go and click on filters, check or uncheck different options. I don't know what happened. I mean, I think the previous version was much better, was user-friendly compared to this one. This one is not user-friendly at all. And I guess I'm not the only one. There are a bunch of comments. A lot of
Somebody
senators have the
fixed
same
what
opinion.
wasn't really broken. Somebody fixed what wasn't really all that broken.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot.
I can speak to that, though it does not report to me. I want to say that because I have relayed that from the provost's vantage point of meeting with department heads and deans, is there was an update in software. Now, I will say that what has been helpful is they did go in and perform a patch. And if you select your course and your course number, it does give you the enrollment trends. It tells you the available seats and the number registered, which you had to go section by section in the earlier version. So they are aware, they're trying to make improvements, but they're a little bit limited in what has been phased out of some of their software systems.
I think Senator McNeil has her hand up next.
I'm just going to change topics for just a second. I would just like to have an update on the status of our senatorial positions, because I am, for example, I'm a person who is serving in a college that I no longer reside in. And I feel like I'm in this chasm of trying to represent two different, and they conflict frequently. And so can we kind of be updated on what's going to happen with faculty Senate positions?
I would be happy to do that. We voted to maintain for this current year the system as it was elected in the spring. So technically you continue until the new round of elections to represent the college that you were elected by in the spring. We will be reapportioning and running the elections in the spring under the new structure, meaning there will be a College of Arts and Sciences, not the three individual colleges. There will be a new College of Visualization, Performing Arts, etc. Those sorts of things will be a part of the reapportionment process. And so come another 5 months, everything will fall under the new system. But for those remaining interim months, you're representing technically the college that you were elected by.
Senator Hammond had her hand up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to Andy's topic about registration. Me being from computer science and engineering, it seems like it would be really easy to make sure that a student's time does not overlap and is not within a half an hour of any of their classes. considering that the university has all those, that information. So I think there could be a way to more strategically let people have their time in a way that they don't feel crazy rushed. That's all. That's just the computer science in me, computer scientist in me.
So I raised my hand. So I want to go back to the interface that Jorge disliked. It takes a little getting used to, but I've found that actually going back to previous semesters actually is a little bit easier than the old one, and some of us have to do that quite a lot. So some of it works okay.
May I follow up?
Yes, your hands are raised next.
Yeah, okay, well, what are they going to do about it? I mean, it's very cumbersome to use. I mean, I think a lot of people agree with me. Are they going to keep it the way it is for the next 10 years?
Get some feedback from the students, run some user studies.
Well, I will tell my students to
Not
complain.
you, I'm saying that not you, but get the people who made the system.
I mean, the previous version was not awesome, but it was probably friendlier than this one. I mean, this one is really difficult to use. I mean, anyway, that's my point. Thank you.
Senator Pickens has his hand up next.
Thank you. This is completely not about registration. I'm completely jumping ship on y'all. Sorry. I wanted to bring this up because it was mentioned with Dr. Banks and Dr. Anand. As far as the budgeting model goes, I am the representative of the Faculty Senate. I'm the chair of the budget subcommittee for y'all. I have been bringing the updates to the budget subcommittee, and I don't necessarily know that I have a lot to add from Dr. Banks and Dr. Anand's discussion earlier, but if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. But really, the performance metric, and I think one of the things that at least we internally within the budget committee have really been working at is keeping in mind that I think we think very close to ourselves. We think about the classes that we teach. We think about the student credit hours that we have. I think I want everybody to keep in mind that as we move forward with this, one of the things that the committee is really considering is everything is at the college level. And while we recognize that different colleges produce differently, and there are differences, Galveston was mentioned, law and dentistry, they're in, different locations as well. We're trying to look at as many different factors as we possibly can and include as many different metrics as we possibly can to help everybody be successful in that. We have different SCH and WSCH and research is its own subject. But we're trying to include as many different metrics as we possibly can so that the colleges can equilibrate out unto themselves. While we have had the small class discussion as recently as last week, I believe it was. And in that, it's, let's say, arts and sciences. Irene, I'm going to bring you up since you're on the committee, but, she teaches small classes. And one of the things that the committee is considering is that even though she teaches small classes, they're in, arts and sciences, there are many larger classes that would equilibrate out at that level. So we're thinking at the college level at the moment and leaving the distribution up to the deans once that money gets redistributed. So I just wanted to kind of give you all an update a little bit there. And there's a number of factors, and it's a very fluid situation at the moment. It's almost every time I go into a meeting, we have different things to discuss, but we are definitely moving forward with a lot of considerations on the table.
Senator Hammond has her hand raised next.
I just wanted to officially go on statement that Texas A&M is really supportive right now of our colleagues and friends at the University of Virginia. It's heartbreaking what has happened just recently. I just wanted to mention how much I support them, and I believe that all of Texas A&M campus does. That's it.
Senator Haney has his hand raised next.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to Senator Pickens. Thank you for that update. One of the things that was distressing with when President Banks came here to Galveston to address us was talking about the pay disparity issue. And she addressed that the plan is to catch up through like merit percentage adjustments. That's concerning because we didn't get them. So we're following farther behind. We're not even keeping up at the same rate that you are in College Station. Are you guys aware of that? That we're not even keeping up with you because we're not even getting the percentage raises that you got?
So our consideration at this point is not on the salaries of the individual. It's on the individual units. It's just the total funds generated by the units. So we haven't moved into the direct costs of the units at this point. Okay. But I'll definitely bring it forth and we'll keep it under consideration.
Because that was troubling to a lot of us down here.
I can imagine it would be.
Yeah, we're gonna try to catch up with the disparity through percentages, and we didn't get any percentages. So I just want to make sure that we're aware of that.
Excellent, thank you.
And can I also add, Senator Haney, that Senator Townsend expressed those issues very well to the chancellor last week when we met with him. So I think that he is very aware of how the current model that separates Galveston out from College Station is beneficial in some ways, such as capital improvements in Galveston, but is really detrimental in others. And I think that we did have a good discussion, and people are becoming more and more aware of the issue at Galveston. So hopefully something will get done about that this year.
And I will echo that. I'm also on the CPI executive committee, and every meeting that we've had this last month, we've mentioned that as well. I personally have brought it up. So yes, we're very aware, and we're very much trying to make it aware to the administration as well, the effect and it has on your morale as well.
Thank you to all of you.
Senator Moyna has her hand up.
Hi. So I wasn't going to say anything else about the class size, but but Senator Picken got me out of the bottle. So the concern about small class sizes, and my concern still after Dr. Banks talked, was that this is just something that is going to be kicked down to the deans. But the deans are also incentivized to reward and punish according to class size. And it takes a saint, and most deans are not saints, to ignore the fact that a department has to teach in small classes, or else it cannot do its teaching job, because the content cannot be taught, say, and beyond, if you go beyond 25 people. And the problem is that if you just count everything, such as class size, you're forgetting that people who have that sort of contact with students do a lot more than teach them. I write letters of recommendation from students in all y'all's colleges because I know those students. I write letters of recommendation for NASA, for medical school, for things that have nothing to do with what I do, but have a lot to do with the fact that I actually know the students individually in ways that I couldn't if I was teaching them in groups of 200. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with teaching groups of 200. What I'm saying is people who teach in small classes do different things with those students and have different access to those students. And my concern is that everybody's going to be incentivized to massify things, teach via Zoom, which is now quite common in some colleges, and the quality of all the instruction is going to go to pot. So, not just mine, everybody else's. So these are things that I don't see a way out of because of the way the incentives have been set up. There is no differential bean counting for small classes that I can tell. My department was closed because basically it teaches small classes, and I don't see a way out of this.
NK?
You're muted.
You're muted.
I just want to clarify, Senator Pickens can correct me. At this time, the discussion is still fluid, but all I can tell is about 50% of the weight, and whatever that is being done, it is done for the college and the school level. And even at the college and school level, there are some strategic investment, right? I mean, if we take a straitjacket budget model, we won't be able to invest in a new school of performance and arts. So there will be some strategic investments. Similarly, deans can do the same thing if they feel that something is very important to their mission and to move the needle. And to my knowledge, the class size is not a metric that is being discussed. Maybe Dr. Pickens can correct me. What is the heavy weight that I have seen being discussed is the semester credit hour enrollment and the weighted semester credit hour and maybe graduation rates. Dr. Pickens.
Yes, sorry, I'll lower my hand. That's absolutely right. The primary drivers right now, at least under current discussion, are the weighted semester credit hours and total semester credit hours. Graduation rates, we're having a little bit more of an ongoing discussion because there are such differentials between metrics of, say, a professional school and an undergrad curriculum. So that's, really kind of where we are. But really, realistically, the weights haven't been decided yet. We're just coming up with metrics at this point. And the weights are a discussion that will probably come within the next 4 to 5 months. But right now, we're still at the point of looking at metrics and kind of how those algorithms play out.
Senator Moyna has her hand up next. You're muted.
How does one achieve higher numbers of weighted credit hours or credit hours regardless, if it isn't by teaching in larger classes?
Weighted semester credit hours is set by the state.
Right. Oh, but I mean, credit hours generally. I mean, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place because the number of faculty that you have is fixed, basically. And the number of students that each one of those faculty can teach is fixed. So you're stuck with your SEHs unless you get a large class and you teach a small class in a large classroom, which is very hard, or unless you can hire a lot of people at low salaries like graduate students, but that is also limited by the budget that you have for graduate students. So I don't see any slack. So you're stuck with the credit hours that you have. And if you really don't have a lot of independence to change those, but that was one of the things that you're going to be evaluated by in some form. So that's a conundrum I don't know the solution to, and I don't know that departments have any wiggle room, or deans for that matter.
So Dale, NK just raised his hand.
Yeah, deans can certainly make that strategic decision, just like the university will make a strategic decision to invest in performing arts. Deans can make that, if it is important to teach a small class for a language course, that's a decision that the deans can make.
So Dale, at this point, I don't see any other hands raised, or there's nothing in the chat.
I return the meeting to Speaker Rice.
Okay, thank you. And now I need to take us back into a formal business meeting because when we pulled the biomedical engineering 311, I don't think we were cognizant of the fact that it is a required course of a minor that was also on the consent agenda. So since we have pulled the course to have it worked out, we can't really go forward with the minor either. So I would suggest that it would be appropriate for someone to make a motion that we remove biomedical engineering minor from the consent agenda. Angie?
I move we remove the biomedical engineering minor from the consent agenda pending a letter of support.
Second.
So the motion has been made and seconded to pull back the biomedical engineering minor temporarily while things get worked out with the course, which hopefully will be done within the next 2 months so that it gets in the curriculum for the next catalog. Is there any further discussion? Senator Klein, could you please launch a poll? So voting yes is to table the biomedical engineering minor until the issue with the course is resolved.
Well, it's good to see we didn't have too much attrition. So it looks like the poll has stabilized. So I'm going to end it, and this time I'll share the results. So it's 70 in favor, 1 against.
Okay, great. Thank you all for, especially for hanging in with us for the full duration of the meeting and for this final wrap-up vote. With no other business before us, then I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Dale. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Dale.